not a game, it's a rich thing.
All right, so today we have Akhil with us, and Akhil, first of all, we're gonna have a mock, okay? And as we have planned, we have planned this interview, for last couple of days. It is not happening, and let me tell you guys, before we get started, it's Akhil's 12, maybe 11 p.m. in the evening, and thank you very much for joining, Akhil. And I just woke up, so if anything is happening, like anything wrong is happening, please forgive both of us. All right. So first of all, thank you very much, Akhil, for joining in. So we'll make a very casual discussion, Akhil, and I'll be asking you a lot of questions. So make sure a few things, sure. Okay? Whenever you're answering, Akhil, just make a little bit of, kind of elaborate kind of answer, so that it's gonna make sense to everyone. And basically, the thing is that I want to take as much as I can from you, right? Okay. So, I'm not gonna judge you anything. I know how good you are. It's only the thing is that we just have a normal conversation. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, sure, Abhilash.
Cool. So first of all, tell me. Okay, so I know you, Akhil. First of all, before we get started, let me tell that I know Akhil pretty well because he has taken a couple of bootcamp from me, and I know him from a long time. Maybe from last 8-9 months, Akhil. So the thing is that I know what the things that he already has gone through and what his skills are and what our weaknesses are. So basically, main 3 topics will be focusing, Akhil, will be Java, Spring, Hibernate, and a little bit of MS, right? So tell me from which topic you want to get me started with.
Yes, so Abhilash, we can start with Java first of all.
Core Java?
Yes.
Okay. Then I won't be starting with Core Java. Let me start with Spring.
Okay.
Okay, so I have written few questions here, Akhil, for you. Okay, just to make the interview pretty precise. So let me first of all make it very, very simple. And let me ask you a very simple question. Okay, first of all, just introduce yourself a little bit, sure. About your past work experience and everything. Yes.
Yeah, sure. So I have around 5 years of experience working as a Java developer, and I've worked on various flavors of Spring, like Spring Boot, Spring MVC, and some part of Spring Security as well. And I have experience working on Restful web services, Hibernate, JPA, and worked on SQL databases as well. And I've also worked on a microservice architecture. And recently, I'm working with a financial client.
Perfect. And can I know your years of experience? 5 years of experience.
5 years, yeah.
All right, okay. Okay, so let us get started with a very simple, question, just to make it comfortable. I know you can answer me this. Tell me, what is the difference between add component and add service and add repository? Basically, tell me the uses of all these things.
So basically, these annotations are used to define an object. Basically, we're giving the authority to Spring to create objects for us. So for that, we need to add those annotations in on the respective classes like service, repository, and controller. So there are respective annotations for each of these classes. Like for controller, we use @controller, or we can use @REST controller if we are working on a REST API. And for the service layer, for the service class, basically we can have the annotation as @service, where we'll be defining the business logic. And then for the DAO layer, basically, which will be interacting with the database, for that particular class, we can have the annotation as @repository, where we'll be adding those queries, whatever we want to do with respect to the database.
Perfect. Just tell me one thing, if you have a DAO layer, right? And if you're marking your DAO with add service or add component, so what do you think, what is the difference it's going to make, and why Spring is recommending you to write add repository over a DAO layer? So can you just tell me the benefits of doing that?
Yeah, so basically, if we write added component annotation for DAO layer, it will work fine. So, but one of the advantages, it gives a user a readability view, he is able to guess, okay, so this is a repository class, it will contain your DAO logic. So that annotation will says that all. If you write it as @component, so it's kind of a generic. So no one will come to know what logic have you written there. So just for a better visibility, it's preferable to use @repository. And also there is another advantage that @repository helps you to handle persistence related exceptions that Spring provides. So that's one of the advantage for using @repository. But that advantage you won't be getting if you will be using @component annotation.
You remember the root class that Spring provides us for handling the generic exceptions?
Yes.
I mean, for all the DAO exceptions, we have a generic class, right?
Yes, and that class is data access exception.
Exactly. That's what I want to hear. So basically, any exception will be thrown by your persistence layer. Doesn't matter what kind of JDBC technology that you guys are using. Maybe it's a Hibernate or Spring JDBC or MyBTS or whatever. So any kind of exception it will be throwing, Spring will wrap that up with its own exception. What do you call that? Data access exception.
Yes, correct.
Perfect. And okay, with add service also, just want to add one more point here, Akhil. With add service also, doesn't matter how much feature add service annotation is containing. But if you have a service layer, then of course, we should mark that layer with add service, because maybe in future, if Spring comes with some new features with add service, then if your class does have add service, then of course, we'll get those features and we don't have to make any code changes. Yes, correct. Bang on. So the next question. Okay, this is going to be, okay, first of all, you just tell me about the Bean Lifecycle a little bit, okay? Then I'll just show you some code and you just will tell me what will happen in some scenario-based question, okay? First, you just explain me a little about the Bean Lifecycle, what you understand about it, and yeah, what are the annotations we have there?
Yeah, right. So Bean Lifecycle, for the Bean Lifecycle, we have two annotations, @postConstruct and pre-destroy. So what postConstruct does is whenever your container is created, your beans will be instantiated, and then that particular method where you have annotated your basically that method which you have annotated with @postConstruct, that will be called first, and then further activities will take place. And then at the end, when you are the method where you have written the pre-destroy method, that will be called just before the container is about to get destroyed and your bean is about to get out of the container. So just before that, your pre-destroy method will be called. So giving you an example for that, suppose you can use postConstruct while you're creating a database connection. So you don't want to create a database connection again and again. So that will be a one-time activity that you can have it in the postConstruct method. Your database connection will be established at once during the beginning, and then you can perform the other database related activities, therefore in your application. And then at the pre-destroy, you can close your database connection before, just like a cleanup work. So that will be beneficial there.
Perfect. Do you remember there is a couple of interfaces which does the same work as
I think there's an init method
yeah. I mean, that's in the XML. Just same as your at pre-destroy and pre-destroy and postConstruct. We have a couple of classes, and if you're going to see your Spring's internal classes, Akhil, you're going to see that those Spring internal classes basically implements or extends to those interfaces.
Yes, there are some interfaces.
Initializable bean and disposable bean. Do you remember?
Yes.
All right, no problem. Same thing only. Yeah. Okay, so I have a question here. Okay, so you said whenever you have a application context, right? That's your container. I mean, whenever you are initializing the application context, let's say that I am initializing the application context manually in a standalone application. Then, of course, as you said, your postConstruct method will be called, right?
Yes.
And let's say I'm manually stopping an application, okay? And it's a standalone application. I'm doing context.stop, not close. I'm using context.stop to stop my application. So do you think the pre-destroy method will be called in that case? Getting my question?
Yes, you're basically not destroying the container, right?
Yeah. Basically, I'm trying to destroy the containers. So what do you think? The container will be destroyed. I'm going to show you some code, Akhil. That's going to make more sense to you. And for that, so here we go. You have a Bean Lifecycle project over here. Akhil, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. Just see over here. I have a bean here called my bean. Just see the code that we have here.
Okay.
All right. Start method, Akhil. with a log called start method called with add post construct, and a stop method with marked as add pre-destroy. Okay, and it's a component. So if I'll go as by your definition, and I will go to my app.java. So here I'm creating my application context. You can see over here. Okay, annotation config application context, because I'm using annotation based approach, and it's a standalone application, not a web application, not a Spring Boot application. So here if I go to my app config, it does a component scan only, and it's basically scans everything starts with com. So go back to your app.java. So here I have annotation config application context. Okay, and here I'm initializing my application. So as per you, if I'm going to start my application right now, as I'm going to use this app.config.java. App.config.java is scanning for all com packages. So this my bean is also under the com.selenium express or something package. So do you think this particular method will be called?
Yes.
Okay, so let me go to my app.java and let me run this out, and let's see that what's going to happen. Well, the method gets called. So bang on. You are absolutely on point. Now this is my question. I'm going to do context.stop. So I'm stopping the context. Basically, I'm wanting to destroy my container object. Okay. So now my question is, if I'm going to run this, then what will happen? Yes, please.
Yeah, so basically you're trying to destroy your container, but just before it gets destroyed, the pre-destroy method should be called.
Yes. So you are thinking your pre-destroy method will be called?
Yes.
Yeah, but that is a catch. That's why I asked you that, because in the web application that will happen, Akhil, whatever you said. But in standalone application, see that your stop method did not get called.
Oh.
So do you remember? Go back to your Spring Core days. I know, long back.
Yeah.
So the thing is that this is a standalone application, Akhil.
Okay.
Any idea? Anything you remember about shutdown hook?
Not as of now.
Okay, so let me tell you that, Akhil. If I'm going to use context.close, okay, it's going to do the similar kind of work. Sorry. It's going to close the container, right? It's also going to destroy the container object. If I'm going to run this, then whatever you said, that's going to happen, and the stop method is called, right? And because the stop method is marked as add pre-destroy, and you have explained me about that, right?
Yes.
But the thing is that I don't want to stop my application like this, and this is not good. Actually, in your normal application, in standalone application, it's not good if you are going to close your application like this. Rather, I'm going to tell my JVM, Akhil, that whenever you're going to exit, or whenever the JVM is going to exit, at that time, it also going to destroy my application context object. And to do that, even I don't need to call the stop method. I can simply do context.register shutdown. Register shutdown hook, if you remember that. So this is basically a hook, which is going to be telling the JVM that whenever you're going to get cleaned, make sure that you're also going to clean your container and destroy that particular object. So now if I believe if I'm going to run this, my stop method will be called. There you go.
Yes.
Okay. And also if you are calling your stop method like this, no problem. Also right now also there won't be any difference over here. We're on the same page, right, Akhil? I mean, you know already all these things. I just want to explain to everyone. Actually, I'm not explaining this to Akhil. Maybe a lot of things he already knows. Maybe one line of answer will be enough. But I just want to make sure that whenever we are talking with all these things, we all are on the same page. Whoever is even hearing this particular recording. Okay. All right. So let me close everything, Akhil. Okay. And I will just show you one more scenario. Okay. So just tell me one thing, Akhil, in your normal Spring applications, okay, like in your standalone Spring applications. So we basically create our container object by ourselves by doing something like this, the code that I have shown you, okay, something like this. But in web application, do we create our container object manually, or how does that particular thing happen?
No, we don't create it manually. Spring takes care of creating the container for web-based applications.
Correct. So basically, when you say Spring takes care of that, I mean, what exactly you mean? For an example, I'm going to show you the same thing, the similar code, whatever I have written here, Akhil. Let me close this. Same code I have copy pasted here. Okay.
Okay.
So see here, source main Java I have a bean, my bean over here. Okay. Same class only. Start method marked with that post construct. Stop method marked with that period destroy. This method I am not at all using. Okay, Akhil. And in the config file, I have an app config, the same file that I have shown you. Okay, just a configuration file which is going to scan my package starts with com, and a dispatcher servlet initializer which is gonna initialize the dispatcher servlet because it's a web-based application. Okay, so now my question is, if I'm going to start this application, okay, so right now I don't have anything. I have a dispatcher servlet file, I have a configuration file, I have a bean file. Okay, so now if I'm going to start this particular if I'm going to deploy this particular server, Akhil, in Tomcat or in JBoss, so do you think your startup method will be called basically your post construct method? Do you think this is going to be called automatically?
Yes, it should be called automatically.
Correct, because the context will be created by dispatcher servlet
Spring
itself, right?
Yeah.
Spring, basically that's what you mean, I believe, dispatcher servlet, right? Because we are starting the dispatcher servlet. Yes, if I'm going to deploy this application, then I believe that we should have this particular method called, and start method is called right over here, because whenever dispatcher servlet is initializing, it is also initializing our container, right? And when the container initializes, as we discussed earlier, that our startup method will be called. One more question here, Akhil. When the close method will be called, or when that particular pre-destroy method will be called?
When you're stopping the server and your bean is getting destroyed.
Correct. So basically, whenever we stop the server, our dispatcher servlet is obviously going to be shut down, and also it is going to destroy our container and everything. So if I'm going to stop my server, so let's go there into the console. Just adding one more thing to this conversation, if somebody is going to counter you with a questions like, okay, whenever you're going to start your server, your post construct method will be called, and whatever that you have over there, that will be executed whenever dispatcher servlet will be initialized, as we are not starting the container by ourselves, and dispatcher servlet is doing that for us. And whenever we are basically stopping the server, your pre-destroy method will be called whenever you are destroying your dispatcher servlet, your container object will be also be destroyed, and your pre-destroy method will be called. So who is basically helping you to do this? If somebody counter you this question, you just go to a class, do a Control-Shift-T, and go to a class called context loader listener. And if you're going to go to this particular class, this is the class which will help you in a web application to initialize your context and destroy your context. So if you're going to go back to this class, if you're going to go down, you can see that there is a method called context initialized, and this method is going to help you, if you're going to read the documentation, that initialize the root web application context for you. And if you're going to see, there is a method also there called context destroyed, and this method is going to help you to close the root web application context. So anybody is countering you like how it is getting happen behind the scene, let him remind this particular class called context loader listener, and this couple of methods that we have inside called context initialize for initializing a web application context, and context destroyed to close the root web application context. Hope it's making sense. All right. Okay. So Akhil, tell me, what is the REST client that you have used in your project?
So I have used REST template and also OpenFean client. So.
All right. So Akhil, what is the use of, how you'll be using REST template in your project? And tell me what is the difference between get for entity and get for object? What is the difference between these two methods in your REST template?
Okay, so firstly, coming to REST template. So suppose you have a REST API, right? And now REST template is nothing but a client to consume your data, basically by hitting, just like we hit a URL from a postman, right? So similarly, we get a response in JSON or XML format, whatever we want to set. So similarly, in the code level, we'll be using REST template to make our call to any API, like a get, HTTP method, post, put, whatever method we want to make a call, and consume the consumer data or make any changes. Suppose we want to, we have a endpoint as post, and we want to insert a data in some other person's database. So we'll be hitting that particular URL from a REST client, that is a REST template, and then we'll be making changes to a inserting a record to a database, whatever operation we want to perform, and we can do it via the REST template. And then coming to difference between get for entity and get for object. So get for object, these are basically a methods defined in a REST template. So both methods belong to REST template, and coming to get for object, it will return only your object, basically what type you want to get your response. And then get for entity, it will return a response entity. With the response entity, you will have control of headers, the body, the HTTP status, whatever you want to catch. So this is the benefit what we get from get for entity.
Absolutely correct. Okay. So do you know there is another method is there in your REST template? By using that, you can make a REST call. Another couple of methods are there, I believe. You have explained briefly about the get for object and get for entity, right? Couple more are there. Yeah,
we have exchange method as well.
Correct. So exchange method. Another one is there, no, called execute or something. Execute, I believe, but whatever. Exchange is another one, right?
Exchange is another one. Yeah.
So Akhil, so whenever you're writing any REST API, okay, so do you want to just return any plain object directly, or you want to use response entity? And if you're using response entity class and you are returning a REST object or any object that you are trying to return, then what is the benefits that you will be getting if you're using entity to return a particular object while you are writing any API?
Yes. So basically, with the response entity, the benefit you get is like you can send the appropriate HTTP status, like okay, bad request, whatever is it, and along with that you can send the body.
Okay.
So and you can also send your headers.
Correct. Perfect. Okay, there's a simple question for you. For delete, if you're writing an API for delete, okay. So for delete, what kind of status code you will be returning? Pretty simple, no?
Yes, so it should be content not found.
Content not found. 204. Or you can also return 200. Is it okay if you're going to return 200 for a delete request?
Yes, you can.
That's going to be your personal choice anyhow. All right. Okay. So I have asked about your REST template. Okay. Just explain me a concept. So do you think we have to handle timeout whenever we are going for REST template? And if you're thinking, then why do you think so? Why it is important to handle timeout in your while you are calling to any of the REST endpoint?
Yeah, basically when we are connecting to a server, right? So those connections are made with the threads. So if suppose the connection is not being established, so that thread will be particularly blocked. So if one thread is blocked, then another user is trying to access that particular endpoint, and then that thread, because the connection is not being established, so that another thread will also be blocked. So again and again, when the users are coming hitting those endpoints, the threads will be blocked. So we can just to avoid that situation, we have to do a timeout so that the thread is released, basically. So in that sense, timeout is necessary.
Correct. Okay, just tell me one thing. In a server, if you talk about any kind of server, let's say you are using Tomcat server or JBoss server, anything. So can we have many threads inside the server? I mean, in the thread pool of the server, can we have many?
Yes, you can have by the connection pooling.
Okay. No, I'm not talking about the pooling. I'm talking about this timeout stuff only. Imagine I'm using whatever you said that, we will have a server. Let's say we want to hit a particular endpoint, right? Then obviously our server needs to connect to the other server that you are making a connection with.
Yes.
Then obviously one thread will take that particular call and gonna make a call to the other server. And of course, if that particular server is not responding us back in a particular time and it is taking time for forever, then that particular thread will be blocked, right? Yes. And that's what you said. Okay, all these threads where it is available in the server, do you know? That was thread.
So thread pool.
Yeah, thread pool. Yeah, and we can, only the thing is that we will have minimum number of threads. Okay, maybe imagine we have 200 number of threads. So we have to make sure with that 200 threads, we have to serve everyone. right?
Yes, yes.
It's a very costly resource. So instead of blocking one particular thread while making a call, and if that particular web services is not responding us back, then basically we can time that out. Okay.
Yes.
Do you know there are two things in the timeout? One is called read timeout,
And session timeout.
One is server timeout. So
Server timeout.
Okay. So how are you going to differentiate these two things?
So server timeout is like, you are not, just like we were talking, like we are not able to establish a connection to the server. You're not getting a connection back. So that will be a server timeout.
Okay.
Basically, that's going to happen. And the read timeout happens when we are able to establish a connection to the server, but we are trying to read some data. But at that time, we are not able to read the data. So we are not getting a response back. So that is a read timeout. That's going to happen.
Correct. So the next question, Akhil. Okay, let me ask you some simple question. Tell me how you'll be, what do you think about versioning, Akhil, in REST, and how you'll be implementing versioning in REST?
So versioning means, like, suppose we are adding some new functionality to our API and we want that particular new functionality to be used by the user instead of the old one. So it's like we'll define that this is the, like, we'll define an API or that method with a old, like a version. We are giving that, okay, this is the old functionality. So versioning can be defined with multiple things, like using request parameters, and you can have it in the headers.
Correct.
And a couple of other things as well, I think.
I think in the producers also you can define
URI also you can define.
URI is the better one. I think URI is the one that GitHub people used, Akhil. Like v1/something/v2/something, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
Correct.
Okay, so you told me that the versioning can be achieved by the params, by the headers, and by the URI.
URI.
Okay, so versioning means, just a new version of that particular
new version of something.
Perfect. Okay, so here goes the simple question for you. So the question is, how authentication in REST web services work, and how you'll be making your REST web services secure?
Okay, so basically we'll be implementing security. We'll have a security configuration class for that in our API, which will be extending to web security configure adapter. And then we'll be overriding.
We'll go into that, Akhil. Don't make it so much technical. Just tell me how the authorization basically works.
Okay.
How basic auth works. Like, just explain that in REST. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, when we are hitting a request, it will go to the authentication filter. That authentication filter will further give us an authentication object, basically, but that is not a validated object. That object will be passed to the authentication manager builder. The builder will further find the appropriate authentication provider. The provider will basically validate the authentication object. Okay. So there are multiple authentication providers, like DAO authentication provider or whatever, like there are other as well. We can define our own authentication provider as well. But basically what it will be doing, it will be validating that particular authentication object. Then that authentication provider will further pass an object to the authentication manager builder. Then that builder will further pass the authentication object to the security context holder. Why it's passing to the security context holder? So that when the user is authenticating, like when the user is trying to sign in next time, it won't be asking for the credentials. It will check that authentication object from the security context holder itself, and then it will just allow the user to sign in without any credentials.
Okay.
So
got it. Okay. I just want to understand one thing, Akhil. Let's not go into the technical thing. I know you are pretty good with that. Only one thing, just let me know whenever you're making a simple REST call, Akhil. Okay. Imagine, from your Postman, or you are using your REST template or OpenPaint to make a call.
Yes.
So you are making a call and you are also passing something in the header, right? Yes. I want to hear that.
Yes. So basically we can pass token-based authentication. So we can pass a JWT token in our header. And that will be further used for authentication purpose. Correct. Whenever we are hitting a call to another system or another microservice. So basically that token will be validated by the server. It will authenticate that, okay, this is the token which I only generated, or it carries my own signature, because there should be a particular signature to validate that, okay, this is the authenticated JWT token, and yes, you can go ahead and access all other APIs, all other endpoints, basically whatever you want to access. So hang on, we'll be passing that token.
So that's about the JWT authentication token. I am just going to come back to that. In the basic authentication, Akhil, okay, in the basic authentication.
Yes.
Where you give the username and password
Yeah.
and it just
Authorization.
generates yes, and that particular value, the username and password value with a base64 encoded format, you have to send it by making use of the authorization header attribute.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so Akhil, you have made me understand two things. You discussed about Spring Security default implementation. Of course, this is a session-based implementation, right?
Yes.
And also you have discussed about the JWT tokens. Just tell me one thing, Akhil. I mean, what you will be using? I'll be giving you an option or a chance to design some RESTful web services. So which approach you'll be following? Like, you'll be following the session-based approach or you'll be following the JWT-based approach, and why?
Yes. Yeah. So according to me, I'll follow a token-based authentication for in my REST APIs. The reason is that because those are stateless.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So by stateless, I mean like like the server will not be storing the state of your client side. So it's like it's the responsibility of the client to send all the relevant information, everything in the headers, so that the server is able to process that request.
Correct.
So in that case, I will prefer token-based, like a stateless authentication. I don't want to go with a session-based because in session-based, that is only particular to a particular session. That is only restricted to a particular session only. Suppose if I'm trying to hit a request to another system, okay, that system won't recognize my session, right? Because that session is already built in my particular system only, like in my system, but that won't be authenticated by that particular system because the session is not built there in that system. The session is in my system, so that authentication will be tricky.
Perfect. So, perfect. And also, in microservices environment, we scale our application, isn't it, Akhil?
Yes.
We will create many instances. So if you're creating session, then that session will be specific to a particular server, right?
Yes.
And in microservices environment, we'll have many servers, right? So if the client is giving us the JWT token, then in every server, we'll have our secret key or our public key or private key. Using that, we'll verify the signature and we'll just validate the token. So we don't have any responsibility as a provider. So the client will be giving us the authentication token, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yes. In the JWT token, Akhil, you just write something called bearer or bearer. Yeah, bearer. Yes. So what do you mean by that?
Basically, that's a keyword.
That's the keyword. Why do you write that? Just like in the authorization header, whenever you are sending a authorization token, you write basic. Then you give the encoded value of that particular token, right? The username and password encoded value you have to provide in the authorization header by preceding by basic, right? So basic is basically the keyword because you are doing a basic authentication. Just like that, whenever you are doing a JWT authentication, you are writing bearer, right?
Bearer, yeah.
So what do you write that? What is the meaning of that?
I think bearer means like
you are the owner.
Owner, yeah.
You are the owner. There is
username or password.
Yeah, there is no further validation is needed. You are getting this token means you are the owner of that token.
Owner of it. Yes.
Yes. And there is no further validation required because you got that token because you have previously authenticated with our server. Once you give a request, once you do a authentication with our server, then only you get that particular token back, right?
Yes.
Here goes the next question, Akhil. When it comes to JWT, is basically used for authentication or authorization?
Basically, JWT is used for authentication.
Authentication. Okay. So think about it one more time.
Yeah. So I think JWT is used for authorization.
Authorization, because whenever you will be giving the username and password, then only you will get back the authorization token, your JWT token. Then you will be giving us that particular token and we'll be saying that whether we have given you that particular token previously or not. So JWT token you will be only getting once the authentication has been done. Then you get the token back and you will be keep giving us that particular token back for authorization purpose. Perfect. So the next question, Akhil. What is content negotiation?
Yeah, so content negotiation means like what kind of content you want to accept, what kind of content you want your API to accept, and what kind of content you want to get a response from your API, what kind of content you want your API should produce, basically, to send basically as a response. So it can be achieved via media type, like produces or consumes in your API. So media type produces means what your API want to produce, like the format. Does it want to produce XML or JSON or any format? What you want the API to produce? And then comes the consumes. Consumes will further give us the allow us what API can consume, like what format, XML or JSON. So what format, like whatever format you want your API to consume, you will be using consumes, and for produces that will be XML or JSON, whatever you want to send.
Bang on. Okay, I will hire you right now. Okay, but I don't have any vacancies and I cannot afford you. Okay, so the next question. Akhil, is tell me about the cross-cutting concerns in Spring and how do you want to implement that in your Spring project?
Yeah, so cross-cutting concerns basically belongs to the Spring AOP.
Correct.
And yeah, so basically those are basically used for logging purpose. When we want to log something like a global log, or we want to log basically we want to log after this method. We can have those control basically with this cross cut, and we can define a method name, whatever parameter we can give, and we can perform some operations with those using this cross cutting concern.
Perfect. It's not only the log, Akhil.
Not logging.
Perfect. Logging is one. Yeah, logging is one option. Monitoring or security, right? After one method, I want my security to happen. I want authentication to happen. So you can put that things as a cross-cutting concerns only. And as you said, we can implement that by using Spring AOP. Okay, I will won't be going in depth on that. I know you can keep explaining that particular things. Okay. All right. So the next question. Okay, Akhil, in microservices environment. Okay, listen to this question very carefully. In microservices environment, let's say you want to implement all your cross-cutting concerns like your logging, your tracing, monitoring, security, whatever. So where you will be implementing these things, in which level? I mean, in how you'll be implementing these things?
I'll be implementing at the gateway level.
Perfect. That's the answer I want to hear. Yes,
API gateway.
Perfect. This is fine. Okay, the next question. Do I have any? So how do you create custom validators in Spring?
Custom validators. So you have to extend to it. You have to implement some class like custom validate.
Whatever. I understand.
Class, yeah. And then you can have those annotations as @retention, @runtime, and all such annotations which are required. And then there is a method which has to be overridden. There you have to define your logic. What basically you want your.
How do you create annotations in Java? Using which keyword? Class, interface,
target,
annotations.
Annotations.
How do you create annotations? At
target,
at target, at runtime, and everything you have to specify over your class.
Yes.
Just like you define a class, you're writing class name, right? In annotation, how do you do that?
Yeah, I'm not able to recall that.
At the rate interface. Okay.
At the rate interface. Okay.
Correct. All right. Okay. So the next question. So let me just go to core Java a little, and then we'll come back again to Spring or Hibernate one more time. Just tell me a little about, Akhil, about the hashmap internal, if you know about it. Do you know about hashmap internal?
Yes, Abhilash. So
should I ask you that, or I'll switch my question?
No, you can go ahead.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
So basically, hashmap contains two important methods: equals and a hash code. What equals method does, it compares the objects based on the key value, and it belongs to the object class, the method. And make sure if you're overriding the equals method, you have to override the hash code method as well. So hash code method returns the memory reference of the object. Basically, it gives us a bucket number where that object belongs to. And what are buckets? Buckets are nothing but array of nodes. They are called buckets, and each node has a linked list structure in hashmap. And there can also be a possibility that two nodes can share the same bucket number. So this is how hashmap works internally based on these methods and linked list data structure.
I can counter many questions on that right now, but let's not do it because I'll be getting into the list part of it. I think you can basically handle the hashmap questions. Let's talk about the list, but maybe that's something we never focus, right? So let's talk about list a little, okay? So I will have few questions right now, okay? Just see your screen and just let me know the answer about it, okay? The first question that I'll be asking you on list, okay? Can you just to, just to be on the same page, can you just quickly tell me about the, the differences between the list and set quickly?
Yeah, sure. So list maintains the insertion order. Set does not maintain any insertion order. And list, basically the implementation classes for list are ArrayList, linked list, and all. But for set, it is like a hash set or linked hash set. So those are some of the implementations. And also, set doesn't allow storage of duplicate elements, whereas list can allow you to store duplicate elements. So these are some of the differences here.
Okay, this question is just to get you set. Okay, I know it's pretty easy for you. So, okay, so I'm going to show you some things right now. Let's talk about list a little, and let's talk about some interview questions, and let's see that how well we can complete these things. The first question that I'll be asking you, Akhil, see the first few lines of code that I have here. Maybe I can just uncomment this. Just try to see the code from the lines that I'm uncommenting, and I will be just giving you a simple piece of program. Just tell me how this particular thing works. Okay. For an example, I have a list here, okay, a list of strings. Okay. And here I'm initializing my list with 2. With the capacity 2. All right. So right now I'm adding the first element, the second element. Okay. So now I'm adding the third element. So what do you think? It's gonna take the third element and add it to the bucket because initially I'm specifying the size as 2. So what about when the size will be full? Because this will be the first element. This will be the second element. When I'll be adding the third one, do you think we'll get an exception? Or it
should be added. It should be added.
It should be added.
Because
why? Can you go ahead, please?
Because it dynamically creates the size, size in the array list.
Exactly.
So we don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. Can I start it in debug for a moment? Okay.
Yes.
So, okay, 1 second. So by this time, our list size should be, if I'll go to here, okay, and if I can drag my variable view, and if I'll go to the if I'll do show logical structure right over here, okay. The object size is 2 right now. Initially, we have started our array list with the number 2. So if I'll go into that, I have a couple of variables, and a couple of variables are already assigned with 0 and first indexes, right? Now my question is, when I'll be adding the third one, then what will happen? Obviously, if I add the third one, then obviously, as you see, the array list grows, and obviously, as you said, it will be automatically grow, and it will do the trick for us. Perfect. No issues. So now it's list to my second question. And after that, I'll go into the internal. The second question goes like this, Akhil. I'm going to comment these things out. Okay. And just tell me, just see this code. Okay. And just familiarize yourself with this piece of code. So what I'm doing here, actually, I'll tell you the purpose of this particular program first, and I'll just walk you through with the code. So listen to me. So here I'm trying to add, let's say 1 million object. Okay, string object to a particular list. Okay. I will be adding 1 million object, imagine, using the ArrayList constructor and specifying the 1 million object inside the ArrayList constructor for one time. And another time, I won't be specifying 1 million data in the ArrayList constructor. For an example, right here, you can see I'm creating an ArrayList, and I'm not specifying the capacity or the ArrayList initial value that I should be initialize the ArrayList with. Okay. So by default, you know that how many numbers of elements it will be fit in, maybe 10, isn't it? Yeah, the initial capacity, I believe it is 10. So right now I'll be keep adding. See, you can see I have a for loop here. I'm going to keep adding the data to this name list, right? You can see name list.add. And this loop will continue for, let's say, I don't know how many zeros I have given over here. Okay. So those data will be added to this name list. So what I'm trying to do over here, I have a start date over here, and I have an end date over here. I just initialized a couple of date instances, and I'm finding the time that it has taken to insert all those data to my array list. Okay. My
Okay.
question is here, Akhil. First time, whenever I'm initializing the array list, I'm not specifying any data over here, and I'm going to run this particular application. So first of all, I'll resume this, the previous one, and now I'm going to run this. Okay. Now see how much time it's going to take. It's taking 613 milliseconds. All right. Here goes the question. If I'm going to copy this, and if I'm going to put it over here, okay. So do you think it's going to be work faster, slower, or what do you assume? Think about it. Take a minute and then answer me. Do you think it's going to take less time to insert the data right now as I'm specifying the capacity, or it's going to take more time?
I think it should take you more time.
Why is that?
Okay, I think it will take you less time because you're specifying the space already, like a concurrent. Yeah, it doesn't have to look over it in the memory or some random space, basically, when you are not allocating that particular size.
So basically, of course, if I'm going to run this, so you will see that it's going to take very less time, significantly less, and it's 193 milliseconds. Previously, it was 600 something, Akhil. And of course, the base reason is that the way the array list has been implemented. All right. So basically, as we have discussed a little, if you are, go to the array list, let's say any array list constructor, right? In the array list class, if you're going to see the implementation of this add method, right? This is the private add method. Let me go with the add method that we are using. And this is the add method that we are using. Okay. And you know that how this add method works, right? First of all, it is calling another add method internally. And this add method does what? It's gonna check always, like, whether, the size of the array is basically equals to the element data length. Like, if you have 10 elements in your array list, and again, you are inserting, the array list is full. Let's say you have 10 elements in the array list already. And again, you have already inserted 10 elements to the array list, and it's going to check the size, and dynamically it's going to grow, as you have told me already. So there is a grow method here, and this grow method is basically assigned the new capacity. And the way this grow method works is calls the grow method, another grow methods internally. And if you're going to see over here, this is basically where it is basically assigning the old capacity. It's basically assigning the new capacity. And basically, it's the way it is assigning the new capacity by doing a write shift operation. Basically, it does old capacity, write shift of 1. So basically, that's basically means that what is your current capacity? Let's say your current capacity is 10. Then it will do 10 divided by whatever your write shift 1. That means 10 divided by 2. So 10 divided by 2 is going to be 5. Okay. Then it's going to be 10 plus 5. It's going to be 15 is going to be your new capacity. The next time again, 15 divided by 2. So it's going to be 7. So 15 plus 7 is going to be 22 is going to be the new capacity. Okay. That's how the thing works. So the way it's going to work, and you can see in the very next line, it is doing arrays of copy op. Okay. And it's creating a new array by copying the previous array. Isn't it, Akhil? I think you know about this, right? If you remember the way the stack implementation and way you design the dynamic array, you basically copy the elements of the previous array, and then you have put those elements in the new array, and the previous array will be eligible for garbage collection, isn't it?
Yes.
So in that case, if you have lot of elements, right, in the same time, if you are specifying the capacity here, whenever you are initializing the array list, then you don't have to copy the elements from the previous array to the new array. And then you don't have to do that again and again. And of course, that's going to save a lot of memory for us. Isn't it, Akhil?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So that's why if you're going to initialize this with no element, then again, it's going to be dynamically grow. First, it's going to be 10, I believe. If I'm going to put a breakpoint over here, if I'm going to do debug as Java application, just quickly, if I'm going to debug it, just to see what the default capacity is. And if I'm going to do a step over, so step over, and this is going to be my name list. Let me open this. The default is going to be 10 right now, but I'm sure if it is going to be after let's say I'll be adding 10 elements here, 7, 8, 9, 10, then it's going to be 15, the new size. Yes, because it's going to be a right shift of 1, then it's 10 divided by 2 is going to be 5. So 10 plus 5 is going to be 15. And after this, it's going to be 22. After 15 is going to be 22, I believe. So yeah, there you go. Right. And so basically a new array is getting created. The data are getting copied and, blah, 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 about that. Perfect. Yes. So yeah, let's not dig into this pretty much. That's fine. Let me stop this. So we are done with this. All right. So can we go to the next question? It's going to be pretty simple and straightforward. First, you tell me your view about the fail fast and the fail safe operator. Fail fast and the fail safe stuff. Not how do I frame this particular question? Fail fast and fail safe collections in Java. Okay, not stuffs. Stuffs does mean something else in Bollywood also. Recently that Sushant Singh Rajput case, you remember? I just heard news like, stuffs means something else in Bollywood. So I'm not talking about that stuffs.
Right. Yes. So yeah. So talking about fail fast and fail safe, basically these are the iterators. So basically, talking about fail fast first. So fail fast iterator is being used by ArrayList or the linked lists. So what basically happens in this, during the iteration, if you are trying to perform any modification operation, like in adding an element or removing an element, you're basically playing with the existing structure of a list. So that time it will give you an exception, that is concurrent modification exception. Okay, correct. So those are the fail fast iterators. Coming to the fail safe iterators, just the name says safe, so it means it is thread safe. So it means like if you're, so the example could be copy on write array list, it could be, and concurrent hashmap. Those uses the fail safe iterators. In that, if you're trying to perform any modification operation to the during the iteration, so it won't give you that concurrent modification exception. It will work perfectly fine. So this is why it is fail safe iterators, and those are called fail fast iterators, the ones used by the array list.
Perfect, bang on. And I will just go with a program. In the last of, at last we'll just see a program and wrap this particular conversation, Akhil. But I don't have any questions on this, so we're good. So okay, just tell me one thing. If you talk about fail fast, okay, and the fail safe, which is going to consume more memory, the fail fast or the fail safe, collections?
Fail safe will consume more memory.
Why is that?
Because just like talking about copy on write array list. So basically the operations, if you're trying to perform those operations, will be performed on a copy, not on that particular array list. It will perform on a copy. So that for that copy, you will require more memory.
Correct. So basically, it won't perform the operation in the original collection, isn't it?
Correct. Right.
Correct. Perfect. All right, Akhil. So this is the last question. I have asked you about the fail fast and the fail safe collections. And let's look at some classes that I have written over here, and I'll be asking you a few questions. Okay. So I have for each test a class over here, and let's see what I'm trying to do here. And I'll be asking you questions. So you have to let me know what will be the, the things that you are expecting from this particular program. Okay.
Okay.
Just familiarize yourself with this piece of code.
Okay.
So basically, what I've done here, I'm creating an array list. Okay. Then I'm using Arrays.asList, and I'm having few here.
Yes.
Okay. And then it's going to return me a list of, list of strings, because obviously I'm putting some strings over here. And I'm going to get a list of string, and I'm adding this list of string with this array list. Okay. So I don't have to add those things one by one by doing add, right? So in one shot only, I'm adding all these elements to my name list. All right.
Yes.
So now we can see I'm iterating over that name list, this particular collection that I have, and I'm printing those variables, right?
Yeah.
Now my first question is, while I'm printing it, you know that we have many ways we can print a collection. We have stream, we have for each, we have iterator, and a lot of different things. My question is, if I'm going to uncomment this particular code, obviously, if I'm going to run this first, let me just show you by running this application. It's going to print all these players that I have. Sachin, Saurav, Rahul, Yuvraj, Viru, and Lakshman. Okay. So now look at this. While I'm iterating over this name list, if I'm going to uncomment this name list.remove, then what do you think? What's going to happen?
Yeah, it will give you an exception, concurrent modification exception.
Perfect. Bang on.
Yes.
Let me just do run as Java application. And it's going to get me the concurrent modification exception because I'm trying to, modify the existing list while iterating, right? And of course, that is not possible. Perfect. So I'm going to remove this, remove from here. So basically right now, this just leads me to my next question, Akhil. So while iterating, I'm not getting any option to remove or add or change any kind of thing with this particular collection. So let's say if I want some feature, like, if I want to remove something from this particular collection while I'm iterating it, then anything available for that? Any kind of support that we have in Java?
Yeah, Blash, you can use the iterator.
Correct.
So basically, yeah, if you have the iterator activated, so if you perform that remove operation using the iterator for that array list, then you will be able to remove it.
Perfect. I have written the code for you already. Look at this code and familiarize yourself. So I'm doing name list.iterator. So you can see I have the name list over here. Which got all these players, because with this name list, I've added everything, right?
Okay.
So now with this name list, I'm just getting an iterator over here. And then I'm checking whether the iterator is actually having any next element. If it is having any element, I'm just getting that particular element. And if the name is Saurav, okay, if I have a player in my current player, if it is Saurav, then I'm removing that particular player from the iterator. So do you think right now Saurav will be removed from the original list, which is name list?
Yes, it should be removed, because just like I said, if you use it with the iterator, and you will be able to perform the remove operation or that operation. Yeah.
Correct. So you are saying that if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to, I don't need to do this. If I'm going to do this right now, if I'm going to again iterate right over here on the same collection, which is name list, then things should work fine, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Let me do Control S. Let me do right click, run as Java application. And you are thinking, right, Akhil, I should have done something, right? Otherwise, I would not have asked you this question. Okay, we're still getting a concurrent modification exception. Why is that? So did I? Okay, maybe because of this remove inside the for each loop, but I will get something else. And I want to ask you that question. And just take a little bit of time.
Saurav is removed, right?
Saurav is removed from here because that's the iterator behavior. Yeah. Okay, Akhil, just tell me one thing. This Arrays.asList also giving me a list, right? This is called list of names.
Yes, yes.
And this list only I'm adding it to the original list, correct? This is also a list, right? So can I do list of names dot iterator? Is it gonna work in the same way? And from this collection, it's just gonna remove Saurav. Nothing to get confused. This is also a collection, right?
Yes.
It should work, right? If I'm going to do Control S right now, if I'm going to do run as Java application, see what's going to happen and tell me why.
Okay, giving you unsupported operation exception remove. I think that iterator is specific to that original list, and it's not working with a new list.
Okay. Well, what's the issue with Arrays.asList? If you remember, Arrays.asList is going to get us a unmodifiable exception. Arrays.asList is going to get us a not modifiable collection. It's unmodifiable collection, isn't it? Basically give a immutable collection back. And that with that collection, we will not be able to, what do we call that? We cannot change this collection if you're going to build the collection with Arrays.asList. And the solution for this, maybe, you can just put this Arrays.asList with a linked list, new linked list, Control S. What's the issue? import linked list. Okay, now I have to specify, say, list of string. Okay, now I'm building a new linked list with this particular elements, and I think right now this is going to work fine, because with this list of names, which is going to be this one, there won't be any problem, and it won't be giving any kind of error like this, because that Arrays.asList only was causing the issue, because it was returning away unmodified collection, right? So now if I'm going to run this should fix the issue. Correct. There you go. Okay.
Saurav is not removed.
So because this is here, I'm printing from the name list. I should be printing it from the list of names. Control C, Control V, Control S, run this. Okay, cool. All right, so that's it. And Akhil, I just want to know one more thing. Okay, so let's say I'm, let me just report back my code to whatever it was. Okay, then I'll just ask you one or two more questions and we'll wrap up. So name list. Okay, everything is fine. Control S. Okay, so now if I'm going to run this, things should work as usual. And okay, things are working as usual. I'm printing my list over here, and I just reported back my code. I have one question for you, Akhil, right now. While I have created the iterator over here, I'm creating the iterator over this name list. This name list I have defined over here. Okay, now while I'm iterating over this particular collection, let's say here I am trying to add something to my collection. If I'm going to do my collection, which is going to be name list, let's say, with this name list, I'm trying to add one more element, let's say kef. So do you think it's going to work? Think about it.
But the name list iterator.
I'm iterating only.
Yes, should work.
Are you sure?
You're using it should not. It should not work.
Why?
Yeah, because you're trying to modify. You're trying to modify the structure of that.
So what's the exception I should get?
Concurrent modification exception.
Okay, there you go. How I'll be fixing this? This is my need right now, and I want this kef to be added to my name list. So this name list, if I'm going to do a control click, this is going to be this is right now defined as array list of string. So how I'm going to fix it?
Okay. Okay. So you can. So you want to use array list only?
I can. Yeah, I want to use array list, but I don't want this concurrent modification exception. I want to change my collection even while I'm iterating on this.
Maybe you can use CopyOnWriteArrayList.
Correct. That's what I want to hear. CopyOnWriteArrayList. Copy this, paste it over here, and there you go. This should fix the issue. Unsupported operations. Why is that? Okay, so the problem is here, Akhil, I have not commented out this player iterator.remove. Okay, so let me comment out this player iterator.remove, and let me just try to run this particular things, and I think it should work right now. Even we are adding the new element to our existing collection, which is name list. Still, these things are working because this name list has been defined as a CopyOnWriteArrayList. Of course, if you're going to change this array list to your normal array list, then of course the things will not work, as we know that this is not a concurrent collection, and the normal collection that we have are fail fast. So any kind of changes that you'll try to do whenever you are iterating over the element, then of course it's going to throw us an exception called concurrent modification exception. And to make it fail safe, you have to use the collection from the concurrent package, isn't it?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Can you just tell me, Akhil, this concurrent collections that we have, like CopyOnWriteArrayList, concurrent hashmap, and all these things, in which package it is in? I'm not expecting any answer. Just can you just recall if you can? Concurrent package, I believe. Java.util.concurrent. Right?
Java.util concurrent. Okay.
Because these things are only there just to help us in a multi-threaded environment, right?
Right.
Okay, we'll see some programs in the end of the session. Sorry, not in the session, in the interview today. I mean in the mock. Right. So, all right, good. So, okay. So, Akhil, the next question. I'll be asking you about the singleton design pattern. Can you just tell me what do you understand about singleton design pattern? And I want to link that particular thing with Spring. Just tell me what is the difference between singleton design pattern. You first explain that, then tell me the difference between the GOF singleton design pattern and the Spring scope. There is a scope called singleton, right?
Yes.
Can you please tell me about that? Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, a singleton pattern is nothing but in Java, you can only create an object for that particular class only once. No more objects can be created for that singleton class. Okay. So, and coming to the Spring singleton, like the scope, what we have, it's like one object per Spring IOC container. So it means like that only one bean can be created per that Spring IOC container. No more beans can be created. But in Java, we can only have one object, but that is not limited to the container, just like we're talking about Spring.
Correct. So in the entire runtime, what you are trying to say, there will be only one object if you are implementing the singleton design pattern, correct?
Correct.
But in Spring, it's going to be one per container, right? If you're going to make the scope a singleton. Okay.
Yes.
One for application context, what we can say.
Yes.
Perfect. And how can you make your class singleton? And and how can you? Okay, the breaking part we will be discussing later. Maybe people who are hearing this recording or hearing this particular interview, make sure that whenever you are answering this question, the counter will be how many way you can break this particular things, and we can have a 20 minutes talk on that, but let's not go into that because it's going to be a very long interview then. Just tell me, Akhil, how will we implement the singleton design pattern in Java?
Yes. So basically for implementing singleton design pattern, you will be requiring a private constructor. And then you will be needing a static method with the return type of that object, with the return type of that class, basically, which will give you the object for that class. And basically, these are two main things, basically private constructor and that static method matters, which will give you that object back. And the return type should be same as the class.
Okay. Can you just tell me one example in your Spring or Hibernate or whatever the framework you have used, where you have come across a singleton class?
Basically, we can talk about a password encoder that uses a singleton pattern.
Who is password encoder? Bigcrypt?
No
script? Yeah.
No password encoder.
Just confusing you. Yeah, no is the right answer. Okay, so okay, don't go by me, okay. Okay. So the next one is okay. Just tell me couple of examples of factory design pattern that you have come across in your framework that you're using currently in your project, just like Spring or Hibernate. Couple of instances where you are using factory.
Basically, so basically a factory pattern is being used by session factory instance. Basically, when we are trying to get the session object from the session factory, so that particular thing is using the factory design pattern. Basically, session factory, the name says it all. So from session factory, we'll get the session object, and then we can perform our CRUD operations.
In Spring?
In Spring, I'm not able to.
Bean factory?
Bean factory, yeah.
Yeah, just now we have discussed containers and all, right?
Yes.
A very simple example is going to be Bean factory, or you are doing get bean and it's giving you the object of that particular class, whichever class you are demanding for. So of course, cool. We're good with this. So the next question. Okay, I'm running out of questions right now. So yeah, we're good. So Akhil, we'll just do few things and we'll wrap up this interview. I just want you to give me a complete internal deep dive of how the authentication, the form authentication works in Spring Security by sharing the code in your machine and letting me know everything step by step. And I'll be countering you on that particular thing. So could you please share your screen?
Yeah, sure.
And I just want to know, how a form-based authentication will work in Spring framework whenever you will be using Spring Security. And just let me know about that.
Yeah, sure. So let me share my screen.
Take your time, please.
I think it is disabled, the participant screen.
Okay. I'm just giving you the permission. So imagine, I have Spring Security implemented in this particular project and I get a login screen. I enter my username and password Akhil on the screen. Then how the flow will go internally?
Right. So let me enable the Spring Security first in my form, the starter.
Sure. Yeah.
So whenever the user will be hitting the request, security login page will be populated just like a form-based authentication. And
Correct.
whenever you are submitting the credentials, okay, so your request will go to your username password authentication filter. Let me show you. Username password authentication filter. Your request will come here in this class. Okay.
All right.
So then in this class, your this method will be called attempt authentication. So here it will obtain your username from your form, what you submitted, your password, okay, and then it will generate an authentication object with this username with the implementation classes username password authentication token. Authentication is nothing but an interface, but it has multiple implementation classes, and this is one of that class. Okay. So it will create an authentication object. It will go to the authentication manager. As you can see, authentication manager will further call the authenticate method of the particular authentication provider class. Okay, so let me go here, open implementation for the authenticate and this provider manager.
One second, Akhil. I just have a question over here. So you said your username and password will be entered by the form, right?
Yes.
And where you are capturing those things, in which line? And
in the line number 77 and line number 80.
Okay, and with those two username and password, you are constructing the username password authentication token. Yes, and you are validating that token by the help of the authentication manager.
Correct,
right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So now So now what is the implementation of the authentication manager in Spring? The default implementation.
Authentication manager for Spring.
That authenticate method that you will be calling, right?
Yeah, so that should be the authentication provider.
Can you just show me the implementation?
Yeah.
That's
provider manager.
Exactly. Provider manager.
Provider manager. Yeah.
So what is the work of the authentication manager? Can you just click over there? Provider manager authenticate method. Let's say it's going to take your authentication object, the username password authentication token object. Then what will happen from here?
Yeah, so basically it will look over the appropriate authentication provider that will be further validating your authentication object. If you can see, there is a loop going on for checking the appropriate authentication provider. So the role of the authentication manager is to get the appropriate authentication provider for you. There can be multiple providers. Even you can create your own provider for authenticating a object. Okay. So it will check for that supports method in the provider class. So if it gets if it doesn't matches, so it will come out of the for loop.
So what is that true test? Line number 174. Can you do a control click on the to test?
To test, yeah, sure. So it's basically checking that the
type of the authentication, right? I mean the class name. What
class name?
Yeah. So there, what class we'll have, because we are getting the username password authentication token, isn't it? So the class will be username password authentication token, right? And that's what you're gonna send it to your provider. So which is the default provider that we have in Spring Security?
We'll be having a DAO authentication provider.
DAO authentication provider, correct. And what the DAO authentication provider will do? Can you go to that? Can you just so where if that supports, right? The flow will come to where? Let's say if it finds your authentication manager finds
it will come here.
Okay, so basically you are saying line number 182. Okay.
Yes.
So can you just find the implementation of that provider authenticate method? So just show me which particular apps. I mean, class has that logic, the authentication logic.
Yeah, it should be abstract user details authentication provider.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, here how come down. Yeah, how that authenticate method is basically working, where basically it's loading the things. Yeah, you just scrolled it down. Can you go up a little?
Yeah.
Authenticate method. Yeah, there you go. Like, where it, because right now you're inside the abstract user detail authentication provider. So you said, DAO authentication provider. So when the DAO authentication provider will be get called?
Yeah.
Because
So
it's
DAO. Yeah. So basically, we are in the abstract user details authentication provider class now. So it will look over the appropriate provider for it, which is the DAO authentication provider. So from where can you find out the authentication provider is from this line number 133, user, retrieve user.
Can you just go to the retrieve user implementation?
Yeah, sure.
So you will be going to the DAO authentication provider, isn't it?
And you can see, yeah, DAO authentication provider. And now here we are using the load user by username. So which basically loads our username.
Okay. So right now, how many types of user detail service which just comes pre with your Spring framework? I mean, how many types of user detail service? I mean, there are some default user details manager provided by your Spring security. What are those?
In-memory authentication, JDBC authentication, and you can also create your own user details. But there's also one of that along with that in memory. LDAP. Yeah, right. LDAP.
So okay, so let's say whatever the things that I have registered in my configuration file, whatever the service that I have registered, maybe user details or in memory or your own user detail service, then you are saying that load user by username method will be called.
That will be called.
And it will basically get you the username from the memory, or maybe from database, from LDAP, or from your wherever you have that. And then it will be get you the actual user, right? And that user will be again validated by your manager.
Yes.
All right. Perfect. Yes. Good job. Okay. That's what I wanted to hear. All right. So that's it, Akhil. Thank you very much. And I mean, it's glad talking to you. It's been 1 hour and a half. And so I don't want to fake anything to the people. So basically in between our call got interrupted for some time, and we have reissued the same thing maybe after a few hours. Restoring screen recording. कुछ तो हुआ. File recovery in progress.
ऐसा नहीं फिर से
ऐसा नहीं होगा. अब तो अभी एनर्जी, अब तो टाइम ही नहीं मिलेगा, अभी स्लॉट ही नहीं मिलेगा. आप खुद ही बोल के भेज देना, मैं ज्वाइन कर दूंगा. So yeah, we have stood this particular things in couple of shots, but I believe this particular interview is going to help everyone, Akhil. And maybe I'll just try to invite you one more time, maybe after a couple of months, once we're done with some advanced stuff, and we'll talk about some microservices and Docker and some more advanced thing, and we'll see like how the things goes. You want to say something?
Right. Yeah, thanks, Abhilash. It has been a pleasure talking to you. And the bootcamp I got from you from the last couple of months, it has been really helpful for me. And
my courses, don't promote my courses. That's fine. Okay. But yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for saying that, Akhil. Yeah, but I mean, it's been really great talking to you as well, Akhil. Actually, my main intention was, whatever you guys have learned for last few months, maybe from me or from, the project that you are working with, we just want to have a healthy conversation so that everyone, who will be watching this recording, at least they will be finding it helpful. So thank you very much for this, but maybe we'll have it one more time once we complete the current bootcamp that you are attending. It's been a pleasure, Akhil, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Abhilash.
See you again. Bye.
Nice talking to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.